That is one big spike.
Everybody but everybody came here looking for treasure.
Oh,
No, something.
yeah. That's not.
It's a lot of water, for sure.
$175 million. That is the number that is about to rewrite history. After years of relentless digging, Rick Lagina has finally conquered Oak Island, uncovering a hoard of gold in the infamous money pit that silences every skeptic. Many people are crazy about this staggering fortune, but the most shocking fact is the gold is the least valuable thing they found. We are going to show you what they uncovered at the bottom of that shaft. It wasn't just another artifact, it was the first piece of the jackpot itself. This discovery doesn't just threaten to rewrite history, it proves a treasure exists that's powerful enough to bring down the very pillars of Western civilization. The real payout. The storm crashed over Nova Scotia with a fury that felt personal. You see, this was the kind of night that birthed legends and buried secrets. While the world slept, Rick Lagina made the call. For years, every shovelful of dirt had been scrutinized by historians, government officials, and online critics. But not tonight. Tonight, under the chaos of thunder and darkness, the money pit would face its final test.
It's a lot of water, for sure.
Well, that's the rough. It's a lot of stuff everywhere. There ain't no way that bug's keeping up. Yeah.
Giant floodlights cut through the rain, turning the dig site into a ghostly alien landscape. The roar of the massive excavator was the only thing that could challenge the storm. Men huddled in slickers, their faces grim, whispering about the curse that had already claimed 6 lives. The thing nobody tells you about the Oak Island curse is how real it feels when you're standing at the edge of that pit in the dead of night. It feels like the ground beneath you is waiting to make you number 7. Rick, however, was a statue, his eyes locked on the pit, his expression unreadable. Then it happened. A sound that ripped through the night, a deafening, soul-shaking clang. The excavator's steel teeth, designed to chew through hundreds of tons of rock, had struck something that refused to break. The sound wasn't the dead thud of granite, it was a resonant metallic boom like a giant bell being struck deep within the earth. Every machine fell silent, every man froze. What many overlooked at that moment was the data streaming from the geophones buried around the site. The monitors lit up, showing massive hollow voids below. Not natural caverns, but perfectly defined chambers.
So we need to keep going. We could be closer than we've ever been to this actual treasure or to where it was deposited.
It was as if they hadn't just hit a chest, they had knocked on the door of an underground cathedral. Marty Lagina rushed forward, his voice tight with panic, yelling to shut it down. But Rick's voice cut through the storm. "Push on," he commanded. The ground groaned, shuddered, and then gave way. A huge section of the money pit collapsed inward, not into a sinkhole of mud and water, but into a gaping black maw. Floodlights swung down, revealing the impossible, the opening of a hand-carved tunnel, its walls lined with massive fitted stones. Rick was the first to descend, his boots landing on a floor laid by human hands thousands of miles from where history said they should be. The cavern was immense, stretching over 100 feet in every direction, and its walls were a library of the impossible. Intricately carved Templar crosses were etched over strange, curling Phoenician script. Norse runes intertwined with symbols that looked almost Egyptian. To put it mildly, this wasn't a pirate's treasure vault. It was a tomb for entire empires, a place where forgotten civilizations came to bury their truths. At the very center of the chamber rested a colossal slab of polished obsidian, a monolith bound by thick rusted iron clamps. Etched into its surface was a single perfect Maltese cross. The island had finally revealed its first true secret, but it was only a test. The map of the heavens. With a grinding roar that echoed through the cavern, the massive obsidian slab lifted, its iron clamps snapping like ancient bones. For a moment, dust choked the air. Then the floodlights hit the contents of the vault and the world stopped. It was a sight of pure, blinding brilliance. Stacks upon stacks of gold ingots, each the size of a man's forearm, were piled in perfect, gleaming rows. They shone with a luster so pure it seemed as if they'd been poured just yesterday, untouched by the centuries of darkness.
This type of greywacke, which is common in this part of Nova Scotia, does tend to naturally fracture with this type of a prismatic shape.
Men fell to their knees. Hardened excavators who had spent their lives moving dirt and rock openly wept. The initial frantic calculation was almost too big to comprehend: $175 million. Lying beside the gold were artifacts that made no sense being together. A Spanish conquistador's helmet rested next to a silver chalice chased with Arabic script. A Roman legionary's eagle standard was propped against a chest overflowing with uncut African diamonds. It was a king's ransom collected from across the entire span of human history. But as the crew celebrated, Marty Lagina stood motionless, his gaze fixed not on the gold, but on the darkness behind it. His voice, when he finally spoke, was a low whisper that chilled everyone to the bone. "This is bait." What many overlooked was the subtle placement of the gold. It was arranged to be found first, to overwhelm and distract. And it worked. The fortune blinded almost everyone. But Rick knew. You see, the builders of this place didn't go to this much trouble just to hide money. Beneath the first layer of gold ingots, his light caught the edge of something else. A large, heavy chest, sealed not with a lock, but with a thick layer of black, hardened resin that seemed to absorb the light. It took two men with crowbars to break the seal. With a final violent crack, the lid opened. Inside, there was no more gold. Instead, the chest was filled with dozens of bundles, each wrapped in crimson silk and tied with a black cord. Rick lifted one. The silk was embroidered with a strange two-headed eagle, a Templar sigil of the highest order. As he unfurled the fabric, the scent of papyrus and old vellum filled the air. He was holding ancient scrolls. Translations would later reveal them to be lost gospels, forbidden prophecies, and detailed letters from crusaders who had officially vanished from history. One scroll spoke of a builder king and a sacred bloodline that had to be protected at all costs. But the most shocking fact was at the bottom of the chest. It was a plate of hammered gold, its surface etched with an impossibly detailed map. It wasn't a map of the world, but a map of Oak Island itself, showing a labyrinth of undiscovered tunnels and sealed chambers. As Rick tilted the plate, the team's surveyor gasped. The lines on the map perfectly aligned with the star constellation of Orion's belt. The entire underground complex was a mirror of the heavens. The gold was the key, and it had just unlocked the door to a temple. When the curse awakened, just as the revelation of the star map settled in, the island fought back. A low, violent tremor shook the cavern, and the ancient stone groaned as if alive. A section of the tunnel wall exploded inward, burying two crew members in a shower of rock and dirt. Panic erupted. For years, the legend was clear. 7 men must pass away before the treasure would be found. 6 had. At that moment of chaos, it felt like the island was trying to claim its final price. As the injured men were hauled out, every light on the island died at once. The generators, the floodlights, even the handheld flashlights, all extinguished in an instant, plunging them into absolute terrifying blackness. A single worker managed to get his emergency UV light working. Its strange purple beam swept across the walls, and the entire crew recoiled in horror. The walls were now glowing. Faint symbols, invisible just moments before.
Although widening the borehole to 4 feet in diameter and conducting subsequent dive operations were unsuccessful in determining what the object was, in 2020,
now shimmered with an eerie blue light. They were warnings, ancient and menacing. The thing nobody tells you is how fast a secret can travel. By dawn, the world knew. Grainy cell phone pictures of the gold, the scrolls, and the star map had leaked online. And the world descended. News helicopters swarmed the sky like angry hornets. Black sedans with diplomatic plates began rolling off the ferries, carrying quiet, stern-faced men who introduced themselves as envoys from the Vatican. Their mission, they claimed, was to protect sacred artifacts. But everyone knew they were there to seize the scrolls. The island was transformed overnight from a historical dig site into an armed fortress. Private security contractors, the kind you see in war zones, erected fences and checkpoints. But even as the modern world tried to lay claim to the island, an older power made its presence known. The scrolls spoke of a brotherhood, a secret order of Templar descendants who had guarded the vault for centuries. They had never left. Eyewitness accounts started to surface among the crew. Hooded figures were seen standing at the edge of the forest, watching the dig site, only to vanish into thin air. Slips of parchment appeared on equipment overnight, bearing messages in archaic Latin. "You have unearthed what was not meant for daylight." The warnings became more direct, mentioning the curse of the seventh man. The psychological warfare was working. Hardened men began quitting, walking off the job in the middle of the night, convinced they were trespassing on holy ground protected by ghosts. They were no longer treasure hunters. They were intruders in a sanctuary, a secret that shattered worlds. While the world fought over the gold, the team of linguists locked themselves away with the Crimson Scrolls, and what they found was the ultimate secret, the core of the entire Oak Island mystery. You see, the Builder King mentioned in the texts wasn't just a medieval lord. The scrolls laid out a detailed, undeniable history of a literal bloodline, one that stretched back 2,000 years to the historical Jesus Christ, a lineage the Templars had sworn to protect after smuggling them out of the Holy Land. Oak Island was its final sanctuary. It sounds like a fantasy, but then the cavern walls provided the proof. The strange heraldry etched into the stone matched the crests of forgotten Merovingian kings, the French dynasty long rumored to be descended from that same sacred bloodline. The science only confirmed the impossible. DNA swabs from artifacts in the chamber came back with genetic markers that existed in no known database. It was a branch of humanity that had been hidden from history. People watching this are likely wondering, could this be true? The thing is, if authenticated, this discovery wouldn't just rewrite history. It would detonate the very foundations of faith and power across the globe. Rick was faced with an impossible choice: unleash a truth that could tear the world apart or bury it again forever. Before he could decide, the Guardians made a move. One morning, the security team found the impossible. Several chests of gold, worth tens of millions of dollars.
We are seeing some quantities of gold.
It shows gold.
Yeah, it's there.
Had vanished from the heavily guarded storage container. The locks were untouched. The alarms never went off. Security footage showed nothing but static and flickering shadows. It was a clean, phantom theft. The Brotherhood had come in the night and reclaimed a portion of their sacred treasure, a clear message that they could take whatever they wanted, whenever they wanted. Rick's fury was eclipsed only by the speed of the official cover-up. Within days, governments around the world jointly seized control of the operation. The official story was released, an incredible $175 million discovery of historical gold and artifacts, but there was no mention of the scrolls, the bloodline, or the anomalous DNA. The deepest, most profound truth was classified, locked away in a vault far deeper than the money pit. The salt spray felt different now, colder, less a promise of discovery and more a mournful sigh from the Atlantic. Oak Island was declared a restricted heritage site, sealed off from the world with a clinical finality that felt like a tombstone being lowered into place. As Rick stood on the shore for the last time, the crunch of gravel under his worn boots was the only familiar sound in a landscape that had become alien. The island he knew, a place of muddy toil, whispered theories, and shared hope, was gone. In its place stood a fortress of brutalist concrete and gleaming steel, a scar of modernity gouged into the ancient earth. He watched the armed patrols march along the newly erected fences, their movements precise and devoid of emotion. They weren't treasure hunters, they were sentinels. Their high-powered rifles and dark tactical gear were a stark contrast to the shovels and metal detectors that had once defined this place. Floodlights perched atop monolithic towers bleached the color from the autumn trees, casting long, skeletal shadows that danced where the Fellowship had once gathered in the war room, their faces lit by the warm glow of maps and dreams. The official story, fed to a hungry and satisfied public, was a masterpiece of misdirection. A priceless cache of Templar artifacts, the headlines had screamed. The centuries-old mystery finally solved. They told the world they found gold, but they buried the truth. Was this the greatest discovery in human history or the greatest cover-up? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe.